Hello, welcome to Fiberchats. My name is Irina. I'm the host of Fiberchats. If you are new to my channel, please consider subscribing. And if you're a returning viewer, I love having you here. Welcome. And my guest today is Miguel Bonilla. And Miguel has an account on Instagram called Tajitos Tacos Tequila. So
That's
let's
right.
talk about that name. How did you come up with that particular name?
I like the alliteration with the T sound. And I also I thought about calling it two needles, tacos and tequila. I wanted something fun, but my name is not Michael, it's Miguel. So I wanted something that represents my identity as a Latino in the US. I know a lot of people get stuck on that. They're like, what does that mean? And when I've joined chats, people get stuck on the name, but tejidos means knitting. That's all it is. And I think everybody knows what tacos and tequila are.
Right. Well, let's talk about the tequila. So I've seen
Sure.
one video where you show how to make a proper classic margarita.
Yes. Yes.
Do you
That's
ever
my
make
favorite.
Well, it's my favorite. So I've watched it
Oh,
very
great.
carefully. I
We have
paid
that in common.
attention. Right. I was like jotting down the notes. I paid
Yeah.
attention. I was like, okay, the right proportions.
Yeah.
Do you ever make flavored margaritas? So you always go for the classic?
I tend to go for the classic, but I do like to mix it up, different tequila cocktails. So maybe I'll start putting some of those on Instagram as well.
Oh,
But
please
I
do.
sometimes I do. Sometimes I like, margaritas with mezcal or margaritas with guava. I don't make those at home, but I do like those. You like those as well?
I love pomegranate margarita. Like that's my
Oh
favorite.
yeah.
I don't know why, because it's like
Yum.
it's not super sweet. It has a little tang to
Yes.
it, so I just like I feel like that's
Nice.
probably my favorite
I'm
if I
gonna I'm
go for
gonna
the
find
flavor.
one today.
Yeah, like film a reel to make the
Yeah,
pomegranate margarita for fiber chats.
nice. I'm gonna drink one in your honor later today.
Okay, thank you. I love that. So are you like a foodie in general?
I probably was a foodie well, I know I was a foodie before I started getting into knitting. I definitely like to eat. I like to cook. I'm in New York. There's lots of great places to eat. Yeah.
How did knitting came into your life? Like,
So knitting, I started to knit because of the pandemic, and it was a tough time because I live in a neighborhood that was highly impacted by COVID, and I remember feeling a lot of anxiety because I would hear the fire engines and ambulances the whole day long. It was a really scary time, and at the same time, my mother, who lives by herself, my father passed away a few years ago, and I would call her every day just to check up on her, and it was a very anxious
right.
time, and I felt like and I just remember the tone in her voice and me feeling helpless. And I kept thinking, well, what can I do with her to keep her connected, to keep her entertained? And somehow knitting came up for me. And so I sent her a package and I thought it was something we could do together. Um, she ended up not really picking it up, but I did, and I really enjoyed it. But I think originally it was really to do something with my mom to help her through the pandemic and for
Was
myself.
she has she ever knitted? Or it was a new skill
She,
for her as well?
when we were little kids, she used to crochet. She used to crochet, and she used to make like doilies. She used to make like the little dolls on top of the toilet paper.
Oh,
She was
that's
really into it. I think it's a very Mexican thing. A lot of people in Mexico love to crochet.
right.
And that was actually the first craft I tried to pick up, and I just couldn't get it.
It's so
It's like a
interesting.
different language.
You know what? It's so interesting to me because yesterday I was interviewing this girl. She's only 12. So she does crochet. And I asked her, I mean, she does crochet, but she also does like incredible weaving. Like she's just mind-blowing
Nice.
artist when it comes to weaving. And I asked her, I was like, have you ever tried knitting? And she's like, yeah, and I don't get it. Like I can't, it's so weird with two needles. I just can't figure it out. And I find like a lot of people, I either crochet people or knitting people. Like something, one
Yeah.
thing is easier than another. because like
Yeah.
with me it's the same thing. Like I can do pretty much anything with knitting, but crochet, like, and I told her, I was like, I can take a Shetland lace chart, which looks like second concerto of Rachmaninoff notes, you know, and I read
Yeah.
it like no problem. Like I don't, nothing stumbles me there. But you give me like the simplest crochet chart, and I'm like,
Right.
you know, how do I read it? Like I'm totally lost. And I know all these stitches. Like I can crochet like in theory, but
Yeah.
like to read the chart is just like something my brain doesn't yet register. So I didn't give up yet, but I don't
Me
know.
neither. I made so I started knitting in October, November, and I started making scarves for family for the holiday and hats. And I wanted to crochet little hearts, and I spent hours, just hours tearing up yarn. And I have I want to learn how to do amigurumi, but it doesn't sink in. But
It's fine because
I picked up.
amigurumi I can do, but like to make
Oh,
the simplest
nice.
dollies, like I can't. Like I made some really pretty intense amigurumi. Like I have a friend who was going through cancer treatment, and her favorite animal is panda. So much
Yes.
so that when there was a baby panda bay born in the Smithsonian Zoo, she was watching the camera for hours. It was just like
Yeah.
always on her desk while she was working. There was a camera watching that baby panda live. So I
Oh,
made
wow.
her, so when she was going through the treatment, I made her a panda, and it had like gazillion little pieces for like the paws and the toes and the whatever, everything. And so I can do that, but somehow like you give me a simple like 2 by 2 dolly and I just can't. I don't know. It's the flat pieces that somehow throw me out, you know. Um, so you started knitting with scarves, which is like, I
Yes.
guess, you know, most of
Typical,
us,
right?
that's how we start, you
Yeah.
know, with something
Yeah.
rectangular and simple.
Yes.
How did you progress from that to what you're doing now?
I don't know. So I started doing hats and scarves. So because I work from home during the pandemic, I was able to do things that kept, where you could do mindlessly, I guess. Um, and I liked the way it felt when you finished something. Like I started to do hats after that. And then actually Caleb, I started watching, and I learned mostly through YouTube. And Caleb had a video on, it seems like a lot of knitters are scared to try socks. And actually, there you go. Why are
No,
you
I've
scared
been
of
like,
socks? They're the
I've been
easiest.
teased by every guy that's been on my show. It became the common joke because like yesterday, Jonathan Fallow tagged me in the story saying like, don't you think it's time you knitted some socks? Professor Pearl gifted me his pattern for socks. And it's like, I'm being made fun by now basically for my fear
Uh,
of socks. And I've seen
li-
you've made a ton of socks, right? Like you
Listen,
made a bunch.
Irina, I'm a visually impaired man who's clumsy. Like I can barely see it, and I have big hands, and I use and I'm able to make socks. And so the first sock I made was a tube sock, and I could show it to you. I have it here.
Sure. Yeah.
Sure. Those are the easiest socks to make because there's no shaping. You just do the pattern, going around and around, and then you do a Kitchener stitch, and it fits almost any leg, right?
Right.
Um, and then, but it was Caleb's video that inspired me to do sock knitting because he really kind of broke it down. And the first socks were ugly, misshapen, fat here and all that kind of stuff. But but now I think I'm getting the rhythm. And then
Oh
I
my
had
God, like
people that,
I've watched it. I looked at your pictures on the
oh
Instagram and
really? It's
they
not
like
that
so
impressive.
perfect. Oh my God, like are you kidding me? Like
I cover
those
the flaws.
those
you
are
know,
incredible. No, and it's
right?
funny because today, you know, like I'm interviewing you, but I also have
Sure,
premiere on YouTube, and this video is gonna be posted later. But like,
sure, sure, sure,
I have a premiere with Niti Natty, and she made 47 pairs of socks. And my mind just blown because like she had the podcast where she went over every single pair she ever made. And
Yeah.
it's like,
Oh,
okay,
wow.
you know, it's doable. People doing it.
Yes, yes, yes. And you know, the thing is, I live in New York City, so you know, I can't carry a sweater
Right.
with me. I can't carry a shawl. It's easier to just get. Yeah, and I use the small circular needles. I think those are the best way to get started as well.
Right.
So you could just take it anywhere in the
But you want
laundromat.
the 9 millimeters, like the whatever the
Yeah,
nine is it
yeah,
centimeters? Centimeters.
yes.
Right.
I think it's 9 inches.
Or 9 inches. Yeah. I'm
I
like,
think, and I think it's like,
what?
I think it's like 24 centimeters. I don't really know.
It's
Something
nine
like that. Nine
something. Like I know
inches.
because the
Yes.
Professor Pearl always says it, and then so I tried his sock, and I got
Yes.
all the way to the toes, but then
Yeah.
I realized that I misread the pattern or something wasn't clear in the pattern for me, and I skipped like all the decreases after the heel, so the foot just
Yeah.
like looked like massive tube basically. And so I
Yeah.
have to like undo that and like finish that sock. Like I got it sort of like I sort of have it, but
Yeah.
like it needs finishing.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I took a picture that I was knitting that sock while I was in the archery range with my youngest son, and I
Yeah.
was using magic loop, and he was like, "What is this?" Like I thought we were friends. I told you to use the 9 inch needles. So he's a huge fan of those. Yeah, I'll
Yeah. Me
try
too.
them. Yeah.
Yeah. It makes
So,
things portable.
so talking about living in New York,
Yeah.
um, I know that you doing this men group meet and meet, and
Mhm.
like I saw a picture of you with all my stars of Fiberchats. There was Duke of Nico who came to New York. There was Cairo and
Yeah.
um,
Lois.
Louis. Yeah, and like
Yeah.
I mean, Louis is like I'm starstruck every time I talk to him. So anyway, but like, how do you like that? Like, is that like really special? The opportunity to do all this?
Well, you know, so Felicia, who owns String Thing Studio in Brooklyn, hosts a men's knit night on Thursdays, every other Thursdays, and it was actually Duke who reached out to me through Instagram. He's like, "Hey, I'm coming into the city. Let's grab some noodles and go to the knit night." So that's where I got connected to all of those guys in person. So that's always nice because some of them I've chatted with on Instagram.
Right.
So that's been nice. It's a nice vibe. It's very welcoming. You know, people open a bottle of wine and you're chatting about just about everything. And you do see people that are well known in the knitting community who just drop by and hang out. It's a nice thing to do. If you're in New York, you should definitely go there.
Right. And like
Um,
I saw those pictures and I was like, gosh, I want to
yes.
be in that place.
Yes, yes, yeah. I'm trying to encourage Natty to come, Natalia.
Yeah.
So if we're all there at the same time, I'll take a picture for you.
Oh, yeah, please do
Yeah.
that. Like I would love to have a
Yes.
picture of the Fiber
Absolutely.
Chat stars in New York.
Yes. Yes.
Um,
Absolutely.
Is that important for you, like that? Because a lot of people think of knitting as this solitary kind of craft, right? That you sit at
Yeah.
home next to TV and you just knit something, socks.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. Yeah.
is that important part for you, being able to like be part of the community, to know that there are other guys knitters and other knitters, like to be inspired by them?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the reason I'm here is because I think knitting is a great way to promote wellness. You know, it lowers your heart rate. It reduces depression and anxiety. It's definitely helped me out during the pandemic. And a lot of other people have picked it up. I think that's become the number one hobby in the US. A lot of people picked it up. So for me, I want to promote it as a way to promote wellness. And I think part of it is that community, that sense of community. So my partner collects transformers. There's really nothing there. You're not really kind of building any skills. That's not for me. That's what he likes. That's not really for me. But I think as someone who just joined the knitting community, one of the benefits has been just the welcoming spirit that I've experienced in the knitting community. So I've joined. So for example, I've been part of the Needles at the Ready. They'll have like a men's night, and people are very kind, very welcoming. They'll give you tips on what to do. And that seems to be part of the knitting community in general. And when I've met up with knitters here in New York City, and there's lots of opportunities in New York City to meet with knitters, it's always that same kind of like welcoming, positive vibe that keeps you connected to other people. So absolutely, I think that's one of the benefits of engaging in this hobby, right?
Right. Well, let me ask you a different controversial kind of question.
Go ahead. I love it. Bring it on, Irina.
So you're saying about the mental benefits of knitting.
Yeah.
But do you ever get stressed by knitting? And I asked Louis that question. Like there is certain projects that you might find difficult, right? Or there is like certain deadlines that you committed to, like testing or to some knit along or something. Or there are like some events that you feel like you should do to meet community, but you can't fit it into your schedule. Like, is anything regarding knitting stresses you out?
Those are good questions. I think it's healthy stress though. Like I've been doing some test knitting, and I did a test knitting for a brioche sock, and I totally messed it up. It's my first time doing brioche. But I also feel like once I did finish the first sock, I was really proud of it, because I taught myself a lot of different things. I taught myself how to make a straight edge on the heel with the contrasting yarn. I taught myself how to do the brioche. So I think that stress is healthy stress, because you kind of have to stumble through something you don't know in order to learn it. Do I have some FOMO, fear of missing out? Sure, I'd like to. There's lots of opportunities to meet up with other knitters in New York City, but I don't feel compelled. I'm more of an introvert, believe it or not. So if I can make it, I'll we're still kind of dealing with the pandemic, with the Delta variant. So I'm selective about the opportunities that I take advantage of.
Yeah. Right. How much did Instagram make difference in your life during the pandemic?
I just joined Instagram maybe in April or May, and for me, what I liked about it is, I live in a very, very big city, very big city, and it's easy to be anonymous. It's easy for things, for example, there's 10 local yarn shops in New York City. A lot of people, you have to find them though, because it's such a big city. And what I noticed is that the knitting community is actually very small. It feels like a village. Like it seems like people know each other. It was very easy to connect with Cairo, or Duke, or Lewis, or people in Los Angeles. I met this lovely lady in Chicago who was very supportive and very kind. And she makes project bags. And I had mentioned to her that I don't have project bags. I put my stuff in Ziploc bags. And so she sent me this really nice, project bag and some yarn, some local yarn. So I think that's really beautiful. And it definitely made me feel like, well, I want to give something back. And so I started hosting meetups for knitters in New York, because I want to keep that gift going. I want to, create a space for other knitters to meet up with each other, in the same way that other people welcomed me. So I think it's been really good in that sense.
So what's your, do you have a vision for yourself of what you're trying to do? Let's say once COVID hopefully out of here and we back to somewhat normal life, what's your dream as far as knitting goes?
I definitely want to keep doing these meetups, and I have a friend, Charlie Vasquez, who's a certified meditator, and so I like the idea of bringing mindfulness to knitting and creating kind of like knitting experiences. So we did this meetup in Governor's Island, which is an island that's abandoned, and I don't know if you've been there, but
No, but I
it's
saw you announcing about it on Instagram.
yes. So I like the idea of being close to nature, mindfulness, just creating spaces for people to connect with each other. So I want to continue to do that. At some point, I do want to do a podcast again for that purpose, right? To share my experiences as a new knitter, but also encourage other people to take up knitting as a hobby, because I do see the benefits of it from a wellness point of view. So
Right.
that's what I want to keep doing.
Do you feel like there is a stigma about men knitting, younger people knitting, and how do you deal
Yeah.
with that?
I don't know. I don't care. I don't care. I mean, I tell my family, and I think because I came out of the closet a long time ago. I'm an older person. At a certain point, you just don't care what people think, and you just keep doing what you love to do. Um, if people have a problem with me knitting, I wouldn't know. Yeah, if anything, a lot of people that I'm close to, or family or friends, have been very encouraging, and they've showed up to some of the knit meetups,
Right.
and want to continue learning how to knit, because I don't think they have the same narrow-mindedness that other people have. I don't know.
Right.
But I haven't had any problems with that.
You were to take a class, what kind of
Yeah.
class would it be? Or do you have a designer that you would love to take a class with? Like, is there some like
Sure.
star knitter there that you would be like, please sign me up?
Yes. I mean, I hate to be part of the herd, but I like Stephen West. I think he's interesting. He's funny. He's entertaining. I like watching his videos. He gets you all excited, like,
No, that
you
last
know,
video that he did with the
right?
people doing this ballet dance as the announcement for the mystery cow. Oh my
Yes.
God. Like I
Yes.
was watching that on repeat basically. It was like,
And I like that, because I think um it's a hobby. He doesn't take himself seriously. Like he does and he doesn't. Like he's
right.
having fun with it, and it should be fun. So
So I was talking about it in a few other interviews because like everybody knows I have the biggest crush on him. Like if I have a dream, it's to have him on Fiberchats one day. So if you by
yeah,
chance gonna be having chit chat with him, mention it.
absolutely.
But like what amazes me about him that with all his like carefree air of like not caring and the whole like going crazy with colors and exploration of like all different textures and like he does like more hair and he combines it with some like less fuzzy things. It's like with all that his
Yeah.
finishes are just like so pristine, so exact, like all the his instructions, like I
Yeah.
never had problem understanding his instructions because they're like so clear. And he does
Yeah.
like all the finishes are just like so clean, like it's you
Yeah.
can look at the shawl and you think it's the craziest design, but if you look closely it's done like a machine wouldn't come up with this kind of finishes, you know. It's like really clean, nice, very I'm trying to think of a better word than clean, but it just like
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
pristine sort of finishes, you know. So it's
Yeah.
like this is what incredible to me about him. And then of course
Yes.
his imagination just has no limits, so it's you're always like sitting and waiting to see what he's gonna come up with next, you know.
I think you're gonna talk to him pretty soon. As I mentioned earlier, I think you're the Oprah of the knitting community.
Thank
Even when I was chatting with Louis and Caro, I think we were all talking about. We all appreciate that you're creating this space for knitters to tell their stories and talk about what they're talk a little bit more about themselves as people. So that's
Right.
always
Well, you
interesting.
know what the thing is, like when I was having like when I was trying to come up with this idea, what drives me is my own personal curiosity, because I want to see the mind of creative people. Like to me, this is the most interesting thing
Yeah,
to see. And we have like we all have so many things in common. We all come from like different countries, different walks of lives. Like we live in
yeah,
different communities, and yet it's like in an international language where like everybody understands. Like you put two knitters together from like different places and they immediately have something in common, you
yeah,
know.
yeah.
So it's
That's true.
so it's like I mean to me it's all this. And that's like another thing, like when you're saying that the sense of community is important, like this is what
Yeah,
drives me also, because I find like a lot of older venues for the knitters have like so many different rules, and they, you know, they like you can show your work but you cannot promote yourself. And I feel like it's so wrong, because to me, like if we all promote each other, if we allow the new designers
yes,
to show their work, if we allow the new indie dyers to show their knitting, right, it's all inspires the whole community. Like the whole community benefits from
yes,
it, it's not just them. Like I
yeah,
feel like it's wrong to separate into them and us, because it's like, you know, like if a friend of mine and I, we opened this knitting group on Facebook called Knitters Gonna Knit, and the
oh
whole
cool,
premise of it was come and advertise yourself, like tell us what you
nice,
do. Like if you're a designer, post your test calls or post your new patterns. If you're indie dyer, show us your yarns, right? And within like we only opened it in May, I believe, and there is
yeah,
already like 2.7 thousand people who joined. And it's like you can see all the collaborations happening within the group. There's like, again, like you said, like people making project bags and suddenly like people from the group ordering it, or people coming up with new colors for the yarn and then designers make deals with them and like start designing with that yarn, you know. So it's like the whole community grows together, you know, and everybody, and we get to watch all of that, you know. So it's like as a knitter you get to be exposed to new designers that you might not even know otherwise, you know.
yeah. I mean, that's why I totally agree, and that's why I really appreciate that you asked me to be here, because I think for me, the latest census came out, and Latinos are going to be are quickly becoming a bigger part of the U.S. Population. And I think as much as possible to create a space where Latinos feel welcome as part of this community. And I think for the most part, we have been as a group. I think it promotes the industry itself. You know what I'm saying? Because
Right.
if you do make it more accessible, if you do make it more entertaining, whatever it is that people are doing that are working that make it, then I think then we're going to see more interesting things in the future. I think things will evolve, because it is, as I mentioned earlier, it is one of the top hobbies that people have been exploring during that pandemic, and I'm assuming that people are still continuing to develop their skills, because knitting is addictive,
Right.
right?
Oh,
Once you
totally.
learn how to make a sock, you're going to make 100 of them. Or once you learn how to make other
Brioche.
items that are a challenge, right? Or lace knitting or
Right.
brioche, then
Right.
you want to do the next thing. And it is really good for you. So
Right.
yeah,
So I wanted to ask you about Latin community specifically.
sure.
So on one hand, there is ages and ages of like heritage in fiber arts in Latin America.
Yeah.
I'm not only talking about Mexico, like everywhere in Latin America, you have like a lot of fiber, you have your alpacas, you have the different sheep breeds there,
Yes.
and there is like weaving, there is crocheting, there is knitting, like all of that. And I actually just saw presentation on Chilean designers, and it was like my mind was blown, you know, just like there's so much fiber talent out there. At the
Yeah.
same time, there is like to at least to me, like I don't know if that's true, like if you feel the same way, there is more of a pressure of the man being manly, the macho attitude, and like what's appropriate for
Yes.
men and what's not. Do you ever get that sort of sense from the community, and how do you deal with it, and how do you try to break that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question, and there's been some activist groups in Latin America that have been trying to address that head on, and they're very clear that they're going to knit in public as a way to challenge gender norms. Now, the name of the group is Hombres Tejedores, so which means male knitters, and they're in Buenos Aires, they're in Mexico, and I think there's definitely still that pressure, or that belief that somehow it's that that craft is should be strictly for women. But I think there are groups that are beginning that really want to challenge that and knit publicly. And I haven't felt that, as I mentioned earlier, but I love hearing those stories. So some of these groups actually have virtual knittings with each other, and they talk about some of the challenges that they're experiencing. Some of them are trying to make a living knitting or crocheting, but I think things are changing. I think that more Latino men come out and take pictures of themselves and show that they're knitting, and I think we begin to normalize it and just see it for what it is. It's a hobby.
Well, I really appreciate that you doing that, because you've done a lot of knitting in public posts,
Yeah,
encouraging
yeah, yeah,
people
yeah.
to go and knit in public on Knit in Public Day.
It's intentional.
Right.
Because all of this is yeah,
Right.
go ahead.
Where did you spend that day, the last Knit in Public Day?
That was in Bryant Park in Midtown Manhattan, and that was a lot of fun. We had a great time. It actually ended up so there was um, it ended up kind of extending into the night. We had, because you get into it, you kind of lose yourself in the rhythm, and I think we started like at 2, and then it just kept going, and then we went out for drinks and tequila. It was like a whole thing.
Right. No, that's
Yeah.
lovely. It's fine because like I called my dad that day. It was like super rainy in Boston, and I called my dad and I said, "Listen, I need to knit in public, and you coming with me?"
Yes.
And he's like, "Okay, I'll bring the umbrella." And so we went like in the neighborhood, just through the
Nice.
streets, and he was carrying umbrella above me and my ball of yarn, and I was knitting.
I love it. I love it. I love it. But I think we need to encourage more people to knit, more younger people, as you mentioned earlier. I'm
Right.
trying to encourage my niece to knit, and she's into it. I think she's into it. I just gotta, you know what it is, Irina? I think that most people struggle with the beginning.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like sometimes I'll look at the comments for some of those tutorials on YouTube, and people get lost, like, and where to put your hands. And if we can get people through that beginning stage that's uncomfortable, right? Like where you're learning something new, like how to make a sock,
Right.
then you eventually you eventually get through it, and then you have that sense of accomplishment that you finish something, and it is pretty
Well, you
good.
know what I found interesting? When I was interviewing Louis, we actually had that discussion because he does that program in schools, in public
Yeah,
schools, where he and like a bunch of volunteers teach young kids how to knit. And I asked him like if he ever had a child that he couldn't teach how to knit, and he said, yeah, there's always like one or two that just like they don't get it and they're getting
yeah,
frustrated. And he's like, and the way I deal with it is I just teach them to make something out of yarn. And I thought that was really brilliant, because part of the frustration of knitting is that
yeah,
we think there's supposed to be this final object at the end. But
yeah,
if you just enjoy the process of handling the yarn, and whatever mess
yeah.
comes out of it is not necessary, it doesn't necessarily have to look like a sock or something wearable,
Right.
So there's this whole issue of like, does it have, like, I have a good friend of mine and she's a brilliant knitter. Like she can
Yeah,
knit pretty much anything. She knitted all her life. And she creates these things that she calls unwearable art
yeah,
as a joke, because like I always put, like, whenever I make some Shetland lace shawl, I use the hashtag wearable art. So she,
yeah.
making fun of me and my hashtag, calls for unwearable art.
Yeah,
But in reality, so it's like she makes all this, like she combines different textures, she combines some like the craziest colors that somehow like make it into this one object. And some people can say like, this is just bizarre. But to me, this is like the true fiber art, because she lets the yarn just guide her. She just lets the whatever yarn and she like plays with like the craziest yarn. She would get some like crazy, like fuzzy and like whatever, and she makes it into these spectacular pieces. So I find like that if you take that finished object goal out of equation, it suddenly like becomes fun again, you know? So like if the person cannot necessarily knit immediately, they can still do something with the yarn. They can do hand knitting, or they can do pom-poms, or they can, you know, do felting or something. Like it's still like, if it just still like, you have to remind yourself that you're doing it for fun before anything else, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's true, because I think Instagram could be a good thing. Right? Instagram can be a really good thing because it connects you to people you might not normally meet. But it could also be, you know, knitters tend to put their most perfect items. It could also kind of set unrealistic expectations for knitters. So I could see that. Yeah, I could see where that's something that we need to work on, and just be okay with things being imperfect.
Right.
You know? Yeah.
Well, that probably, like, I should probably show that my sock that was definitely imperfect.
It's totally okay. I have a friend, Linda, here in town. She's always like, there's no right way, Miguel, just relax. I think we all need to relax. It does not have to be this perfectly knit item that with the perfect lighting. It's not about that. It's about the process.
I have the funniest story about it. So I started doing Shetland lace probably like 3 years ago. And I've done a bunch. Like I've knitted like quite a few, right? And I always grafted certain way. Like I saw a video on YouTube, it sounded reasonable, and this is how I grafted it. So recently, somebody in one of the groups asked, so how do you graft the Shetland lace? And I sent that video. And apparently that's completely wrong way to graft Shetland lace, which I didn't know because I never took a class on it. I just figured out myself. And then there was this whole discussion. Is it really wrong if I done it and it works and it looks fine? And nobody ever mentioned to me that I'm doing it wrong, right? Even though like I posted those pictures of those shawls all over the Facebook and Instagram. Or is it okay not to do it the right way and do it your way, you know?
Yeah.
So sometimes whatever works knitting, for you.
Whatever works for you. I don't think yeah, I think whatever works for you. I just need to relax.
Maybe it's creating new techniques and nobody knew that.
Maybe you're trying something new. Yeah. The way that I see it, and I'm sure I'm gonna like really piss off a lot of knitters, but the way that I see it is, for me, it's kind of like putting a puzzle together. It's the same kind of mental challenges and problem solving that you would use in putting a puzzle together. Like you're trying to learn new things, you're trying to put a picture together. And so I enjoy that process. And if I come up with something, you know, that's wearable, that's nice, that's great. But I'm not trying to do a Stephen West and create something beautiful. I'm trying to do something that's relaxing and fun.
Do you have a favorite project that you've made, something that you're like superbly proud and like, I did?
I did make the Boneyard shawl. That's Stephen West. And let's see, let me show you the nice side. So I do like this. I'm still knitting the ends, but I do like how it came out. I don't know if you could see.
I love the blue.
Yes. So maybe, right?
That's gorgeous. Actually, blue and brown is just like such a gorgeous combination.
Right? You know, it reminds me of Puerto Rico.
Yeah, I'm knitting this shawl. I just started yesterday, actually.
Yeah.
And It might turn into my first ever design, no promises, but it might. So I
Oh,
sort of like decided I had that yarn that for probably like over a year that I just saw and I had to have, and I had no idea what I'm gonna do with it. And it has
yeah,
this like bumpy texture to it, and it has beautiful like browns and oranges and blues all together, and sort of like burgundy. So it's like very fall looking color.
nice.
So I was thinking of doing some sort of lace with it. I really hated how it looked, so I unraveled it. And then I decided that I'm just gonna make like plain stockinette shawl, and I started knitting that, and I really like the way it looks, but to me it's missing some like cool brioche border. So now I'm like, maybe I'm gonna put a brioche border on that,
Do
and then
it,
it's
do
gonna
it.
be, yeah. So I might have a design coming out somehow,
Nice.
but yeah.
Good. You know, that's what it's about. It's like trying things. I think we're a small enough community that, like, to your point earlier, we could be supportive of each other. We could really kind of embody those positive elements
Right.
of what it's like to be a knitter, in our practices. Like you said, like promote each other, promote other designers, or dyers. I think that's super exciting and doable.
But
Let
it's
me show you
interesting.
the tube socks I made,
Oh my God, those are so cute. I love the
and they're
color.
very easy.
Okay,
I could.
okay, I'll need socks. I promise one day. I'll conquer the socks. If you could learn brioche, I can do the
Oh
socks.
yeah.
It's so, it's like it's funny because we all have our own phobias and fears, and we like thinking that something is like impossible, but at the end of the day, it's all just, one stitch at the time.
Yeah, that's all it is. And I think it's okay to be making mistakes, and things don't come out, and that's how you learn.
Right.
And I think actually that's the problem with new knitters. I think that you start hearing excuses like, oh, I realize knitting's not for me, or I realize it's too hard, I can't understand it. But you got to get through that stage. So
Yeah.
I actually I work for the city of New York, and I do a lot of I work with a lot of consultants that train nonprofits, right? And and so one of the things that I'm always thinking about is how do, we do a lot of training, but unless you practice, you're not going to learn anything. And I think it's the same with knitting. Like you could pick up all these knitting books, you can have all the materials, but unless you spend the time like practicing, making mistakes, then you're never really going to learn. So
Well, it's
that's
also,
just part of the process.
right. And it's also part of that inner perfectionist in us, because
Right.
we are very hard on ourselves. Like sometimes I'll make
Yes.
something, like I'm looking now back at some of my like first creations, and
Yeah.
I'm like, I can't believe I actually gave it to somebody,
Right.
but they loved it. And like I have like the very first project I made
Yeah.
was, I just followed that tutorial on YouTube to make baby booties
Oh,
for
nice.
for my girlfriend's then not even born baby, right?
Yeah.
The kid still wears them somehow, like he stretched them, whatever,
What?
and it's like he still loves it. There's like, I made him a hat and I made him booties, and it's like he's 4 now and he still manages somehow to use them, and I'm like, that was like the best thing
Hilarious.
ever, because
Yeah.
she loved it, he loves it, so it's like it was. But like when I look at them, I'm totally terrified because I see all the imperfection in it.
Right. Right. Which is
Yeah.
good, right? Because you're challenging yourself. You always want to do better. So
Now we
yeah,
really have to be kind to ourselves, and to
exactly.
allow mistakes and to allow
Yes.
imperfections.
Yeah. I think young kids and younger people are much more forgiving, but I think as we get older, we somehow expect things to be perfect. Like even when I was teaching people how to cast on, they would get frustrated. And so I think we have to find a way to ease people into it and make it okay that, it's okay if it takes you 2 hours just to cast on.
Right.
It takes time to learn something new.
Well, it takes time to tie your shoelaces, and that's like,
There you go. Yeah,
it's the same thing,
exactly.
same kind of
Exactly.
high bars.
Yeah.
Well, I hope one day we'll meet in New York. I'm hoping to like crush your mem nights one day and meet
Yeah,
all my fiber
anytime.
stars in one place.
Sure.
And we'll
Sure,
do
sure,
some
sure.
margaritas.
Yeah, that
We'll.
sounds great.
Well, thank you so very much for being my guest today. Loved having you over and enjoyed our chat. And I hope we'll get to meet sometime in New York.
You got it. Thanks, Arena. Thanks for having me.